Stathopoulos and Josh Phegan come together in an incredible podcast, Grow, Scale, Master.
An energetic approach to drive progress, master skills, build strengths and put the strategy back into rapid business and personal success.
Backed by real-world experience in rapid scaling to playing the long-term game of business, it's the story of all the lessons learned on the journey to mastery.
Be inspired, renew your energy and chase the future with Grow, Scale, Master.
One of the most important conversations, and I love this con where you just ask someone and say, hey, is the way that you're working today sustainable for the course of the next 10 years? And if you start thinking about those things, you go, okay, great. Well, what you got to start to think about is the importance of rest and renewal and stress and expenditure is always about this whole conversation that ultimately you need to start thinking about longevity and sustainability, but also too, giving yourself enough capabilities to be able to have future growth. And, I read a book recently, and I think that the title of it was something along the lines of Stress Less, How to Live a Stressless Life. And I picked it up and I read the first chapter, and it is the only book where I've literally walked down the hallway at my house, directly out the front door, did not go to jail, did not proceed to go, and just threw it directly in the bin. And I was just, because what I realized straight away.
Are you stressed, Josh?
What I worked out straight away is that there is good stress. And that stress is important because it literally then the rest and the renewal is actually where the muscle grows.
Yeah.
And what they were advocating is, don't push too hard. And it was just like, whoa, this is mad, man.
Yeah, it's not reality though, right?
And the whole key thing is when back in your CrossFit days, if you remember, you would lift the weight,
yes.
right? When did the muscle build? At night when you went home and you went to bed and it slept. And so from that point of view, I think that this is kind of interesting. And there was a guy by the name of George Mumford, and George Mumford was the mindset coach behind Michael Jordan. And he wrote a book on that, and it was kind of interesting. He said, legitimately, like in the modern day, we now call this mindfulness. He goes back when I was coaching in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, we actually used to call it stress management.
Right.
And I think we've got to bring stress management back.
Yes.
He goes, so legitimately, there he is. Jordan's about to take the game-winning shot that can literally help us win the championship. He's there. He's on the line. The buzzer, it's got 3 seconds to go before it's going off. He can make this three-pointer that wins the championship. What, do you legitimately think he's going to pull out some colouring in books and do some colouring in at this point?
It's mindfulness.
Yeah. Or is he actually going to go through what he's done in training 1,001 times before, the breath in, the visualization, shutting out everything else, and just focusing on landing that ball through that hoop? Yeah. And I think a lot about that is a really important mechanism for what we do. So we've entered what we got to call the era of biohacking. The basics of saunas and the basics of going and having an ice bath and thinking about the supplements that you might put into a dietary conversation and a couple of litres of water. What are your thoughts about how important that is for sustained energy management over the longer haul?
I think it's critical, and I'm a massive fan. Dr. Peter Attia, Andrew Huberman, Gary Brecker, Brett Greenfield. There's a bunch of them. And the beauty about today, social media, podcasts, books, all that sort of stuff. You got a lot of access to a lot of information, but if we want serious longevity in this business, then we need to seriously take care of our mental and physical and emotional states, okay? And there's another book.
And spiritual side too,
it's spiritual, of course. There's another book by Tim Glover called Winning. And he spoke about how, he also, I think he was Michael Jordan's strength and conditioning coach along with Kobe Bryant, right? And he spoke about how professional athletes have an off-season, yet people in business never have an off-season.
Yeah, sure.
So when do you do your rest and recuperation? When do you actually work out how you structure your week, or is your week structuring you? So are you getting up early? Are you exercising, moving your body? Are you ice bathing, saunaing, taking those supplements, hydrating appropriately, eating a great diet? And I think if you want to have a great life, you want to be able to be physically mobile into your late 80s, 90s, 100, whatever. And you want to have a great long-term sustainable career, you absolutely need to focus on this part of your business.
And this is an interesting conversation where you start to say, okay, great, well, energy renewal cycles and what they actually look like, and ultimately understanding, okay, great, are people throwing time at the problem, or are they actually throwing strategy at the problem? So we've just come back from a tour of New Zealand, and it's interesting that they're about 8 months ahead of Australia in terms of interest rate increases, and so you can really start to see about what's happening in those markets. And often, particularly in the more regional markets or outside of major city centres, you're starting to see much longer days on market.
Yep.
And so what agents are throwing at that is we do Saturday and Sunday open homes on the same property.
Right.
And so, okay, great. So what we're going to do is we're going to throw more time at it for less buyers coming through.
Yeah.
Because we're going to try and get the buyer.
Yeah.
And what I'm saying to them, hey, this is not going to be sustainable for the longer term. So what I want you to do is that stick to your day of opens. So let's assume it's Saturday and Sunday's off. And the interesting conversation is that if you get someone else who wants to actually come and see the property, no problems. Do that as a private appointment at, say, 2 o'clock, but turn it into an open for inspection between 2 and 2:15 p.m. online.
Totally agree.
And so, and that whole thing is about getting strategic is an important part, because it is the way that you're working sustainable for the course of the next 20 years.
Yeah, right now for some, yes, for others, no. And I also think it's what you got to design the game that you're trying to win in life and in business. So what is it that you want over the next 20 years? I've got people in our business that are gearing up and people that are gearing down in terms of ascending and descending, right, in their careers. However, I've got some people that you would think in our business should be descending because of their age or how long they've been in real estate, but because of the way that they've structured their time, their week, and the way that they go about their business, they're actually gearing up to another level. So I don't think that there's any right or wrong way in terms of where you're at and the sustainability of what you're doing. What I think, though, is you need to have a look at the game that you're trying to win and design that game for the rules that you need in life.
It's interesting about this belief of invincibility. Because, like, if you go and read, like, some of the old school books that have been around for a long period of time, The Richest Man in Babylon, put 10% of everything that you earn into a savings account and just have that as a bare basics backup. And you think why this is important. Touch wood, it doesn't happen to anyone that we know or anyone that's in the podcast or any human, ideally. But, sometimes we go through events, so touch wood, but there's a car crash or there's something that happens on a motorcycle or on a bike, cycling, right? And all of a sudden, our life is changed forever at that point. And if you didn't put money aside, then that's actually a real problem. And I see a lot of people not, I can't afford a house. Yeah, but you know what you can do? You can put $50 a week aside into an ETF on Vanguard and start investing in some shares and doing it safely.
Yes.
And so that, you can actually just put some money inside of a long-term deposit account.
Yes.
And this is an important part around what you're doing, because you've got to be in a position, you've got to work hard whilst you're fully abled.
Correct.
And this is the big conversation, is that literally I know that I've got a requirement to help society. I am fully abled. I know what I've got to do. I pay my taxes. I do all the things that I'm supposed to do to help society function. But also, too, what I've realized is that work is one of the most stable things in your life. So kids will come and go. Hopefully not. Your partner may come and go. Things might change inside of your business. Your EA, your other salesperson, they might come and go. Even your business leader might come and go.
Yep.
But your workplace is one of the most stable things. And I think a lot of people go, work-life balance. I'm like, why don't we make sure that we've got some really cool, stable pillars for about getting the foundations right?
Yeah.
Now, Stutz, did the documentary with Jonah Hill, which is an interesting one on Netflix. And I went and read more with him, and he's the psychologist and psychiatrist. Now, the interesting thing about that is he said, get the foundations right, you can withstand any storm in the environment. And I start thinking about that. Okay, great. So if my diet's good, my exercise is good, my relationships are functional as opposed to dysfunctional. I've got some bare savings, in my account. I know that I've got some good things that I'm involved in. I've always got something to look forward to. You get those foundations right. It doesn't matter about the conditions of the day.
Yeah, totally agree.
And how many agents do you see where, when the foundations aren't right, then all of a sudden, and the classic, Phil Harris and I spoke about it. Every single time that Phil or I would go on holidays in the very early days, we'd get sick instantly.
Yes.
And what we learned is that we were running on adrenaline, and then all of a sudden we would come off it.
Your body was fatigued.
And then that would go into cortisol.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden that stress drug would actually cause that illness. And so now we actually think the art of a great holiday is, can we go on holiday and not be sick in the opening 36 hours?
Yeah.
And if that's the case, then the way that we've worked in that period prior to the holiday is actually sustainable.
Yeah.
So we've done the right things around moving between performance zones and recovery zone, and very deliberately doing that.
Yeah.
So it's sort of funny. Like, I might speak a lot, between 8 o'clock and 3 o'clock, but I don't speak much before 8 or after 3.
Yeah. Well, I've spoken to you during your blueprint weeks as well, and it's like, hey man, I've got 3 days and there's no talking.
Yeah.
It's true though. This is a performance industry, so we are measured. There's no no one remembers silver medals. Sorry, I know how many people work hard for that, right? But the reality is, when you win that listing, you've won 100% of it, and you've lost 100% of it.
Hey, Con, how much do you get paid for coming second in the listing prezzo?
You get 0.
So it is about winning.
It is about winning. So this is all about how can you build something that's long-term, sustainable, that works for you. Your morning routine, your night routine. What are you fueling your body with? What are you consuming in your brain? What are you listening to? Who are you hanging out with? And what do you need to leave behind that no longer serves you? So are they the mooring lines? Are they those glass ceilings that you've put on yourself? I didn't grow up this way, so I don't deserve to have X, Y, or Z. Or, that person there, they're in a bit different brand, or they've got a bigger database, or whatever it is. You know what? The reality is that it's not easy, right? But if you put commitment and you put time aside to actually taking care of your mind, body, soul, and spirit, and then your business, guess what happens? This magic thing in about 90 days happens where you start having abs if you've been, working out and eating right.
I thought you were working on a keg.
It's true. It's called a 12-pack, right? Or a slab in my instance. But that's the reality, right? Like, if you start going to the gym, you're not going to get muscles tomorrow. You're not going to get abs. But in 6 or 9 months' time, guess what's going to happen? You're fitter, your muscles, you look better. Everything works better. And that's exactly the same thing that I've experienced in business.
So there's a great psychological hack on this. Con, if you had a bad movie and you watched it and I was like, oh, that was a bad movie, would you replay that movie 250 times?
Absolutely not.
So if you have a bad thought, why do you replay that bad thought 250 times?
Or if you had a bad moment, or a bad minute, or a bad half hour, or a bad hour, does that mean it's a bad day or a bad week or a bad month?
And so they say that one of the great rituals is have a shower before you go to bed because you wash away the day.
Yeah, love that.
And then when you start in the morning, you've got fresh. A chance. You've got a chance of another day. So what impact can I make today in a really meaningful way? And there was an old school thing that I'd listened to on one of the Spartan podcasts, and this guy had come out of some sort of location. Let's call it Lebanon for now.
It'd be Greece, mate, if he was Spartan.
So long story short, when they took him out, they actually put him on a plane and sent him to America, and he wasn't allowed to have any of his business. And he was like, in that era, he was like a millionaire in that location, which was very, very prestigious.
Right.
And they literally sent him away, and that was it. And they stole all of his assets and all of his identity, and he couldn't go back. And so he gets into America, and all they've given him is literally a credit card with 10 grand on it. And he's got no way of going back. And so this guy goes and he rebuilds this multi-million-dollar business in America. And he goes, the foundational thing, he goes, once you've lost everything, then you actually realize the power in the simplicity. And he goes, the first thing I do every morning is I put my feet on the ground and I try to look at the sun first up and I go, another chance at another day.
Yeah.
And I just start thinking about that, about, the performances that literally you can get really carried away. What about sustainability practices? I know it's simple, carry a 1 litre bottle of water, try to make sure that I'm doing that.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, okay, great. I know when you're pacing, so then I know that I have to come off. So, okay, great. So I'm definitely going to do a sauna on Saturday and Sunday as a part of that.
Yep.
Or one of my rituals is that literally the first hour of every day is for me. After that, I'm going to find everyone else in the world is going to be sucking at me for time, energy, and attention. But that first hour is mine, man. It doesn't matter who it is. But
I'm untouchable for the first hour.
And that's literally that's where I'm going to go for the run or go to work with my PT or do something as a part of that. And then I'll kick into the day.
I think, and look, I do all of those, right? So I think you have to find what works for you. And it depends on how you've structured your day. But I find that the most successful people in real estate or in business or in life are the ones that have actually put thought into this. So a lot of people, will go and see a financial planner, but they won't go and see someone for their mental health or their physical health.
Yeah, sure.
Right? So I think this is an investment in you. You only get one of these things called a body and a mind. And so we actually need to take stock. So have you pre-planned your holidays? Have you actually set out an ideal week where you can have Fridays working on your business or lunch with your significant other? And I just think that if we take care or more attention to how we're feeling, how the body's actually working and how it's performing, and we can put ourselves into a regular peak state performance, then life actually becomes a lot easier. So if you've ever been overweight and you've had to carry an extra 10 or 15 kilos and you're trying to run or walk or exercise, it's really hard, right? But once you drop that weight and that load is kind of lessened, it actually becomes easier. So it's the same concept with this. It's about making sure that you can find a sustainable model that fits you.
Yeah, but this is that whole idea that sacrifice is actually required to become one of the greats.
Absolutely, of course.
I look at Alex and I know that I cannot ring him after 7 a.m.
Yeah, you can't get him.
Through until 3 p.m.
Yeah.
And it's not because we don't have a great relationship. I've known him for a long period of time, but that's deal time, baby. Now, if I want to ring Alex, it's usually 6:30, 6:45 a.m. or it's after 3, unless it's a referral. And so, okay, great. Here's the other thing. I have a lot of clients who go, hey, Josh, do you want to come at dinner? We've got a dinner on Friday night. It's at 8 o'clock. Sorry.
Yeah.
What do you mean? I eat at 5:30 or 6.
Yeah.
Oh, you're no fun. No. I know what I've got to do for the 44 weeks that I'm planning at a high level of performance for the other 8 weeks of rest and recovery. So I'm going to make those decisions.
Yeah. I think the easiest decision that we make is the one that we can break the easiest, because if I make a decision that I want to get up at 5:30 and I get up at 6:30, I can break that because I haven't actually documented that. I haven't shared it with anyone. So I think for me, sacrifice is not it's like accountability. It's not a dirty word. if you want to be able to achieve something that other people haven't or can't, then you actually have to sacrifice. Whether that is, and if you see sacrifice, I mean, do you see sacrifice, not going out at Friday night at 8 o'clock?
I don't see it as that at all.
No,
I say, what a luxury.
You're still having dinner, right?
Yeah, sure.
And you're still at home and you can have a sauna, you can chill out. And then on Saturday morning, you can go and have breakfast and take your time. That's actually a joy. So I think it's the lens that we put on that we might be able to actually see, hey, is this actually really a sacrifice? Because a sacrifice to me is giving up a limb, right? For me, that's a true sacrifice, or giving up something that I can never have again. But if I want to achieve something that others or that I want or others want or they can't have, then I am prepared to do the work. And if you see that as a sacrifice, it might mean that you might need to change your lens a little bit.
Yeah, Con, I better tell you, I made some sacrifices.
What'd you do?
Prior to your wedding,
yes,
I actually went to bed the night before at 7:30 p.m.
You're a good man.
Because I knew that I was going to be pushing the barriers.
Yeah.
And I was planning to stay at your wedding until 11 p.m. that night on a Thursday night.
You did, didn't you?
Yeah, and I stayed till 11.
And you were working the next day.
And I was working the next day.
Yeah.
And I on the next morning, I didn't go to my PT. I didn't go running.
Yep.
And I didn't get up until 6 a.m.
Wow.
Because I knew that I had to have my minimum, my 6.5 hours worth of sleep.
Yeah.
But I was banking some sleep the day before to be able to go to one of the most special moments of the year.
Because you're a good friend of mine, mate, and I appreciate that. But see, is that a sacrifice or is that a pleasure?
It was a sacrifice to say I'm going to go to bed early to make sure I can actually be there for the moment that matters.
Right. So
that's planning, right?
It's the framing. It's the framing. Oh, I need to sacrifice this time, or am I just putting this time into a better investment?
It's easy to wind your way into something. Geez, it's hard to wind your way out.
Yes.
And so this is that whole thing is that, business has really got to be teachable systems, and you got to be in a position that you love what you do and get great people around you.
Absolutely.
The interesting thing to me is that, like, what's the power of the refresher? And if you're in a position, remember when you used to go to like those takeaway stores as a little kid or something with your parents, and there was the first refresher towel? You're like, oh, how good is this? And the smell and all of those things, right?
Yeah.
But a refresher is like a holiday. It's a mini refreshment, a changing gears. It's taking your car for a nice little drive. It's, opening the window, getting some fresh air in. It's taking the dog for a walk.
Yes.
It's being in a position that you go out for a great friend. You go and have a great coffee. It's turning your phone on to silent for just an hour. And I have a look at it now. I reckon that my phone is on silent more than it is not on silent, because it's like I want to be in the zone and really make those things happen.
And all notifications off. Experiences that rapidly shaped you.
Con, I remember it. I was in a position, I think I was about 18 or 19, and I went to my doctor and I was convinced. I said, oh, look, I think that I've got some sort of form of depression, like literally I think it's serious. I probably need to get some medication and make that happen. And my doctor had known me for a long period of time, and he's like, man, you just got a fast brain. You need to move to the city. I was like, what do you mean?
You got to get out of the country.
He goes, mate, well, you're at university, you're DJing, you're running nightclubs, you're doing sound gear, you've got a go-kart racing team. Like, he goes, like, man, you got enough going on whilst you're working full-time as an accountant at a newspaper. He's like, brother, he goes, you don't have that. It's Ferrari engine for a brain, man, bicycle brake, stop overthinking and just get on it. And it was interesting because I got to go and I had the chance to go and work with the fabulous lady by the name of Sue McCarthy, who's changed many lives, over in Kangaroo Island at the Kangaroo Island Health Retreat. And I remember that the first time, she would see you, and it was so phenomenal because she would look at you and she would cup her hand and she'd look you dead in the eyes. And when you first saw her, she'd say, Con, how old are you going to be when you die? Wow. And I used to like look at her and I was like, oh, I don't know, Sue. And she'd go, well, you better know by the morning. And she'd walk off. And all night on the first night, you would be there and you'd like, oh, geez, I don't know. And I woke up the next morning and first thing she'd say, how old? I said, 110. And she goes, and are you living in a way that is consistent to you making it to 110? And I'd say, oh, no, I think there's some things to improve. She said, exactly. And that's what we're going to clean up this week.
Awesome.
And it was so phenomenal because her facilities were like a 1 out of 10, but her programming was a 10 out of 10. You had a hard bed and a blanket, which I think was the Target edition from 1970, and that was it. And it was like, but you know what? Every day you would go through, it was a water fast, so it was 8 to 9 litres worth of water, and there was no food intake whatsoever under medical supervision. And you're in a position that you do 21 k's worth of soft sand beach walking, and you'd actually then do a bit of yoga, tai chi, and Pilates, and 2 hours of saunering spread throughout the day, and then a nice little 5K walk at night, and then a 2-hour lecture from her every day about how to live a good life. And it was interesting. I ended up going there probably 10 times over a 20-year period. And most of the people that were there were coming out of pretty average relationships, or maybe some drug or alcohol issues, or maybe some significant life event stuff, loss of a loved one or whatever. And I was going there because I was a real estate agent. But the interesting thing about it is that literally it taught me a lot. And she would say is that the mind is the master, the body is the vehicle, knowledge is the power, but practice is the key.
Wow, and I've never awesome. I love that.
Never forgotten that, because it just made me think very differently. Okay, great. So mind is the master. Okay, great. The body is the vehicle. Okay, great. So this mind is going to control this body. Knowledge is the power. Yep, but putting it into practice is the key.
Yeah.
And so and you kind of think about that, and I think that this is where I kind of hear it a lot in real estate training, where people go, but it's all about what you implement. I'm like, it's like literally, but practice is the key.
Yeah, it is.
So getting to practicing that skill set, that's really important.
Yeah, I mean, that reminds me too, on a similar train of thought, we're preparing for our annual Head Start business planning session for our group, and one of our opening slides is, are you good enough to be better? And I think that we've all got an opportunity to elevate, whether that's personally, professionally, whether it's your health, your mental health, physical fitness, whatever it might be, or your business. Are we good enough, or are you good enough to be better?
Something that's changing your view.
Con, I think a lot about very specific, explicit recovery. So I'm in a position that I might be working, and I stop for just a second and I just do some breathing just for 30 seconds. Or I'm a bit more than that, where I'm going to go for a walk and get some psychological sunshine.
Yep.
Or I'm going to high five a couple of friends. I'm going to ring some people that I know I can make feel great today. Like, all of those are very specific to get the recovery right. How important is it for you to have a list of things that you can do in recovery? So when you're firing, or when all of a sudden there's a lot of stress load come on, you have to choose something on the list, because then it's easy to do.
I think if you want to be successful in business and in life, I think it's really important to have that menu of things that feed your soul and refill your cup. So for me, it's actually getting in the sun. It's going for a walk. So if you're ever around Parramatta, you'll see, this crazy guy in a suit walking around talking on his AirPods, or just having his AirPods in and listening to nothing, and just walking around the city and going through Parramatta Park. So I think you have to find that thing that's going to kind of rebalance you. Balance is one of those funny things, because I don't want to say this controversially. I don't believe in balance, okay? But I believe in the right setup for you. So if you are imbalanced, it might be that I had to do 12 or 14 hours today, but guess what? On Friday, I'm only working half a day. So I think for me, balance is what you find in that moment, and every opportunity you can to refill your cup, repurpose yourself, rebalance yourself. I think it's an incredible part of longevity.
There's an old school saying too, is that the world for its progress has always relied on the manics.
Yeah.
So realise what you got and play with the talent.
Correct, exactly.